What is up, fellow bench warmers? Welcome to your daily fantasy quickie. Hey guys, what is up? Judgment Day of week. What week is it?
15.
Week 15, Judgment Day. My name is JJT with Commish. Welcome to Fantasy Bench Warmers. Commish, how's your week in fantasy basketball?
Yeah, not bad. Overall, I did have some losses, but did fine. I did fine.
Yeah, as long as it was not a lopsided loss. I had bad losses towards the end, like today and yesterday. My opponents just were able to catch up in some of my leagues and lost 3-5. Very close. Lots of very close losses that went. It could have been 4-5, but eventually it ended up like 3-6, which is annoying. Because I don't mind losing that 4-5, but not the 3-6, of course. In the two segments, that was worst. Today we'll talk a bit about the playoff schedule. We mentioned that yesterday. In case you haven't checked it out, week 16 schedule has already been posted since I think yesterday, so you can check that out to plan your stream for the week. Now, at this stage, there will be teams who will be preparing for the playoffs, and I've got already some trade offers, which is and there have been some trades already. There have been some trades that have been going on that look weird, but I think some of these teams have been preparing for the playoff schedules. Like, why do you want to trade this player for this player? But of course, maybe because of the playoff schedules. So just quickly, in case you are on week 19 playoff schedule, your playoff starts week 19. Who are the teams with the best schedules? Miami, yes.
Miami, yes. The only team with 12 complete games during the playoffs is Miami.
Yeah, but that's probably the best time to start your playoffs, right? Because there are no teams with 8.
I find it too early. I mean, what do you mean? What do you mean? Is it the best time?
Best time in the sense that there are no teams with 8 games, right? And then there are lots of 9-game schedules, which is okay because they're pretty evenly spread, right? Since there's a lot of teams with 9 games. Are you there? All right, we are back.
Yeah.
So I was saying
there's one. I was just
go.
There's one team with 8. There's one team with 8 games though.
Week 19.
Which is Utah, right?
Oh,
Utah.
yeah.
So yeah, there's some bad schedules here also. But in terms of what you're saying, I guess yes, pretty even. You can say overall. No.
Yeah.
So maybe that.
I mean, there are a lot of teams with 9 games as well.
Like
week 20, right? Week 20, there are a fewer teams with 9 games. One team with 8 games, right? Right. So, but the week 19, the team with the best schedule is Miami. Worst schedule probably is Utah. So if you have Utah players there, you'll probably try to swap them for some other players. I don't know if players like. I don't know if you'll be enticed with getting players like Jimmy Butler, Kyle Lowry, because even though they have the best schedule, I don't think they'll maximize that schedule.
Let's say Laurie Markkinen for Jimmy Butler trade, something like that. You would not usually.
Would you want that? Would you want that?
With this schedule, if your team is strong, and if you look at it, the biggest problem will be the finals week of this schedule because Utah only has 2 games, and Miami has 4. So if you're confident enough that you're gonna reach there, then you can roll the dice with Jimmy
You
Butler. I
mean
think
Miami? It's week
Miami has 4.
19. Yeah. Miami
Yeah,
has
yeah.
4, Utah has 2.
Yes. So that's the biggest difference really. But you're correct. No, Jimmy Butler might not maximize those 12 games. So what if he gets like 3-3-3? Then it's just 1 game difference. Maybe Bam would be better.
Yeah.
Maybe Bam would be the safer player to target.
Or Hero,
Though,
maybe.
yeah, maybe Hero also. Maybe Hero. I'll just ask you a question about scheduling. These schedules, because if we say the 12 is clear, that's the best schedule. But those with 10 games, doesn't mean that they have a better schedule than those with 9. Because those with 10 games, some of them have a 4-2-4 or a
Yeah.
2-4-4. With 9, most of them have 3-3-3. So this is balance. So you have to look at that. No, you have to look at that. Now the question really is, which week is it really more important? The first week, the second week, or the third week? Which would you look at the most? Because
First and the second.
yes, my mention is the first. The first is very important for me because you have to win that, at least to get you to the podium matches.
Yeah.
If you have a 2-game quarterfinals or a 3-game quarterfinals, that's tougher. That's worse for me than having a 2-game finals, because by the finals maybe you can just drop your stars
Yeah.
after their last game and
Just stream every spot, right?
yeah, the stream. So that's just me. I don't know if that's you have the same.
Yeah, because we want to get as far as we can, right?
Yes,
And then
yes.
see what happens, what goes on. You don't, if you know that you have fewer games on your quarterfinals, then you know you're not in a good spot already,
Yes, unless you're a
right?
bye.
So the chances of you making it to the next round is less. So you don't want that, right? You rather have more confidence that you have more games in the quarterfinals, you have more games in the semis, or at least close to what your opponent has. And we'll see what happens in the finals.
And the worst thing is, if you're the top seed. If you're the top seed, that makes it even worse. Cleveland has 2 games on week 19. Utah has 3. But let's say you have Cleveland there. You have Cleveland, you have Luka, you have Donovan. You have Denver has 2 games. Jokic. Let's say you have Jokic or Donovan Mitchell. It's tough. You relied on Jokic for so long, and then in the quarterfinals, you're the top seed, and you have only 2 games of Jokic. That's gonna be you might be upset by the 8th seed because of that. That is what makes head to head really annoying at times.
Yeah.
And that is why, in a way, you really have to look at playoff schedules, especially at this part of the season already. And that Jokic situation, 2-4-4. I mean, if
And
you
week
survive the
20,
quarterfinals,
and then
you're
week
good.
20, it's 4-4-2.
Yeah, 4-4-2. So
So
that's
that's a
my point.
perfect example. If you have Jokic, what would you rather have? A week 19 playoffs, which were in their two
Two
four
four four.
four, or a week 20 playoffs wherein it's 4-4-2?
I think I'll go with the 4-4-2. I'll just get to the finals first, and then let's
You
see
see
what
what
happens.
happens, right? You can
The,
drop Jokic after the second game.
the problem with the week 20 playoffs is week 20 has a lot of 2-game teams.
Yeah.
They have there's a lot on that week for some reason. So maybe in our terms, in fantasy bench warmers, this would be very, very crucial, because there might be a lot of quarterfinal upsets, no? Because of that. Well, in the week 19 to 21, it might be more in the semis where it, where it will, the problem with the thing with having it in the semis is that there are only fewer teams playing. There are only 4 teams left playing. So
Yeah.
the FA pool will be better, will be easier
Yeah.
to stream. That's why it's always better to have less games at the latter part, at the last part, not at the quarterfinals part, where 8 teams are gonna be very, very
Active.
focused, active, focused. It's gonna be really tough. It's gonna be tough to stream.
Um, yeah. I mean, I was thinking about, what was I thinking about? Totally forgot what I was thinking about. Um, yeah, but I think it's also with here, I got it. So with the way the NBA has been, I'm not sure how crucial the playoff schedules would be, considering that teams are
That's true.
load managing.
Yeah.
I It's just me. I don't want to overthink about the schedule at this point. Even if I'm the first or second seed, just because teams can sit out the star players without you really knowing, right? On that week, even if it's not a back to back, like what? Who does this? The Grizzlies sometimes does it.
Clippers.
The Clippers always does it, right? With their
The
stars.
Warriors.
The
No.
Warriors, the Warriors, the Grizzlies, usually they have this sudden late scratches, right?
Yeah.
Suddenly won't play Jamoran or something, right? Of course, mostly it's on a back to back, and it gets more complicated because if you look at the schedule, yeah, they have 4 games, but if it's on a back to back, then that makes it 3 for your star players.
That's true. But what one thing that you can do with this playoff schedules though is that if let's say Utah, you have 3-3-2. Even if you're not sure that everybody else would play, 3-3-2 still bad. And that's clear. It's really bad. So or maybe 2-2-4-3 of Cleveland or 2-3-3 or whatever. It's bad. So you can already have an idea of which players have a bad schedule, regardless of whether your opponent's star players will rest or not. Your own players, whether they rest or not, you have a bad schedule. So that just opens up your options for possible trades. Although you have to be careful with trades also, which we can discuss later. But you have to be careful, not just trade because he has 3 games, my opponent has 4, so I'll trade. Not something like that. But if it's like 2 games to 4 games, there's a big difference. Then I can do the deal, the trade. From 9 to 12, that's big, right? From
Yeah,
9 to 12, or maybe 9 to 11, something like that.
yeah. Now that of course, we are like in our leagues. We are what, 3 weeks away, right? Um,
Yeah,
three
four,
fantasy weeks. Three fantasy
four,
weeks
four,
because
four, 4 fantasy weeks.
4 fantasy weeks, but technically it's around 5 weeks, right? Five
Yeah,
total weeks because of the All Star. Um, and some managers are already making moves and trading their players. How do you feel about these things, right? Like you mentioned a while ago off the air about trades that were in. It involves maybe the last place team trying to trade a player, well, based on schedule, because the first place team is trying to trade a player based on the playoff schedule, and he trades with the last place team. Do you feel that this is something that's quote unquote collusion, part of quote unquote collusion? Because that's always a controversy or a
and
topic.
it's hard, as we said always. It's hard to prove collusion. No, maybe there's 2 things here. One is collusion. Like you're friends with that person and just said, "Come on." I mean, we're not gonna do it lopsidedly. Like, well, I have Donovan. He has a 2 game week. You have whatever, Butler. I'll trade, or Adebayo. Let's do the trade. It's fair. Nobody will say anything. So that's one. The other is not collusion. The 13th, 14th seed just doesn't care.
Yeah,
Just doesn't care anymore. So okay, whatever, just trade. So there's 2 things. So for me, the collusion one, definitely that's bad. That's unethical. That's vetoable. The other thing is also vetoable for me, but it's hard to prove that
it's
the
hard to
13th.
prove both.
It's
To
hard
be
to prove.
honest,
It's hard to prove both, but I will just follow by one rule, which is if you're 13th, 14th, or whatever, just too far off already, you shouldn't even making moves anymore. So that's probably that's hard also, because you're basically telling them, no, you're last place, so don't play anymore. So that's really hard also. But if it's gonna affect the rest of the league, then we have to take
but
probably the
you
welfare of the
know,
rest of the league over them. No, over the last place team maybe.
but you know what I've learned in the past 2 years of doing the playing the commissioner's role in these leagues. It's really, you can't prevent. I'm not saying that they are collusion. Of course, top teams are trying to make moves and the easiest target are the bottom place teams because they don't care anymore, right? And
That's true. That's true.
I put up a poll saying, if you are in last place, do you still allow them to trade? And lots of followers said that yeah, you should, because there's no rule against it. They should still trade as long as it's fair deal, and I think that rule still applies. Whether that whether it's because of the playoff schedule, as long as the values or perceived values are close, they're not lopsided, then we're okay.
Yes, I
the
agree.
the burden now lies on the other managers who are not trying to make the trades. It's their problem because they're not trying to make the trade. They can do the same thing, right, as what one manager did, but they did not do that. So I don't think we should fault
But
that manager who tried to do it.
that is assuming there's no collusion, which again is hard to prove, as we said. Assuming that it's just that the top team were just taking advantage of the bottom team, not really caring anymore. Hustling more, hustling, negotiating, trying to just get the best possible chances to win. No,
Yeah.
I agree with you. Can't veto it. Can't veto it. There's no rules. As I said, the biomarketing situation, fair.
Yeah.
Everything is fair. No rules about that. Even if one is the top, the other is the 40. No rules about that. Ethical wise, though, if you are the bottom team, maybe don't do it unless you really have a good reason. Now, maybe, in my opinion, whenever there's a trade, I would want both managers. Maybe we can do this in FPW next year. Maybe both managers, whenever they make a trade, just release a 1 or 2 sentence statement about why they did the trade. Because for me, as long as there's a reason why you did the trade, for me, it should be okay. Like, for instance, the Harrison Barnes Christian Wood trade. If only
No,
both managers knew.
here's the thing as well. Here's the thing. That's why it's also hard, especially in a public league.
Hmm.
If you tell them, if you ask them for why did you do the trade, the real reason could be, well, I'm trying to buy low or sell high. Then they can't, say that out
No,
loud.
yeah, I understand the buy low, sell high, but you can explain trades without buying low or saying buying low or selling high. Like the Barnes or Christian Wood deal. It's easy to say for the Barnes person that I need, I'm down.
Threes. I need warm bodies.
No,
Yeah.
no, I need warm bodies, and I might be 10th or 11th, but I'm a manager who won't quit.
Yeah.
I might be 13th, but I still feel like I can make it to the 8th spot because there's still it's mathematically possible. And if the other managers hear that and learn that they don't know each other, then maybe they would approve the trade. So that helps. That just helps, in my opinion. So I think that helps. That one, that they should at least have a reason for it. At least have, because as I said, I'm guilty of it early in my fantasy life. Whenever I'm on top, which before was very, very common. Unlike now, I'm always at the bottom. Before it was more common when I was on top. At this point of the season, I would really try to scavenge the lower
Yeah.
seeded teams. No, they don't care. So I
Yeah.
just try to offer trades, and then I don't care if it fits their team or not. Just try to sweet talk sweet talk them and whatever. So I agree with your point that other managers should be doing that also if they want to.
Yeah.
They can. They can, as long as there's no collusion. So
Again, the collusion thing, I I've been like past that. I think we caught one with collusion. I think we didn't expose it as collusion, but we vetoed a deal that
yeah,
looked fair, but it didn't look right because it was a Dame Lillard. That this was last year. The last place team was trying to get Dame Lillard, which was weird because Dame Lillard was where they it wasn't sure whether he's gonna come back. So if there's a team that's gonna risk getting Dame Lillard, it's probably the higher seeded teams. But this one, it so happened that the lower seeded team tried to get Dame Lillard. But if you look at the values of players, they look fair. It wasn't even a first round that was being given. So they looked okay when face value wise. But since it was a last place team trying to get an injured player, we vetoed it, saying, it doesn't make sense, right?
yeah,
Unless it's
that's
like something like that. But if it's
yeah,
not like that, as long as values are even, they're fair, there should be good. It should be good. Collusion. to be honest, it's so hard. Even if I chat people, if I talk to both managers, you don't know if they're chatting behind you, telling each other what to say, right? So that they'll match, right? So that their stories would match, right? And that's so easy to do now, right? I mean, so I went beyond. I don't look into the collusion part as much. I look at where the teams are ranked, and then if the values are okay. And I
If it
think
makes
now,
sense.
yeah, if it makes sense for both teams. Actually, I don't dwell heavily into if it makes sense as long as the values are okay, right? If they really wanted to make the trade, as long as it's fair, it's not lopsided, it should be good. Whether you're trying to improve a category or what, to be honest, we don't care anymore. As long
Yeah.
as that's your strategy. We don't want to push you. In fact, we don't really try to say remove this or add this. We usually just say, maybe just you have to rework the deal because it's not going to pass, right? Because that's us,
Yeah.
suggesting something that might help one manager and not help the other man. So I think the collusion part is going to be hard. So I know it's controversial, the trades and all. It's we've had these discussions every year. We always just go back and
Well,
forth, right?
well, this year there at this point of the season there will be more and more trades. For sure in the next coming weeks as the trade deadline comes, as as the
You know what's
playoffs
harder?
arrive, there
You know what's
what
harder at this point, especially towards the week, a week or two before the playoffs start. Watching the transactions list to see if a big player was dropped.
yeah,
That's
that's
tougher
true.
because the
That's true.
trades will come through us, the commissioners. But if a last
Yeah.
place team dropped a player so that the first in the waiver would be able to get that's going to be tough to watch.
Well, yeah, that's true. But the good thing is usually other managers would see that, and there will be complaints, and
Yeah,
at
yeah,
least
yeah.
yeah. That's also gonna be tough. That's also gonna be tough. We have to be very, very alert about it. But going back to this fantasy schedule, the analyzer. One thing we can do with this, no, for me, looking at this, I won't look at the 9, 10, 11, 12. I would look at as I said a while ago, I will look at the 2 game weeks. I generally won't like a player with a 2 game week in any of the three playoff weeks. Now, that would be my general rule. Not just the 9, 10, or 11. But of course, if it's Jokic, for instance, I'm not gonna complain. I mean, yeah, you take it. But the others, like, if there's Chicago has a 2 game week, Cleveland has a 2 game week, Utah, Denver, well, the others, Clippers, then, I might try to work around it. I might. But it's not gonna be easy. Like, I have a team that is really, really on top, number one in one league, really far. So I've really been trying to see what I can do, but so far I've not been able to make deals because every manager probably knows these, you know, these
The
schedule
moves that you're
already.
trying to make.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, the moves
they
are trying
are
to make.
aware of the moves that you're trying to make. So
And
yeah,
be careful too. Don't just trade for the sake of trading. Like you trade, they're same value, but like different stat set, and then your team suddenly gets
yeah.
gets
Not just
gets
for the numbers, right? And then
yeah, it suddenly gets
your
different
your team goes from top in field goal and then suddenly
in the
becomes
middle.
mediocre in
Yeah.
field goal, and then that's going to
Yes.
be
Yes.
a big game changer. I mean, you do that only if you're trying to make the playoffs. I think you try to switch it up a bit, like you see that there's some certain holes, so you tweak. But if you're in the top, uh,
Just to make fantasy playoffs better, be careful with that.
yeah,
That's why better to know these things during the draft. Actually, although I know some people won't care about it during the draft, but when it's this time already, you would think, oh, I should have not drafted Clipper players. I mean, and we talked about week 19 to week 21, week 20 to week 22. That's the FBW League playoffs. I've already mentioned this a lot of times that the Clippers really have a bad schedule there. 2-3-3.
yeah.
That whatever, and what worse is if they rest some of their star
If
players in
there's
those
back
eight
to back,
games. Yeah, and there's no back to back. But if they rest them for for one game or whatever, or there's an injury, then that's even worse. So, it's better to know just the really bad ones for your fantasy playoffs. To maybe, if you have a choice, not to pick those players instead of trying to trade them now, might be too late. And or maybe you can hope that there's a trade in
You know what's the
NBA.
problem? You know what's the problem with the Clippers schedule?
What's the problem?
The players there, I don't think will be very enticing players to own as well.
Yeah, Paul George, Kawhi.
Kawhi, right?
I mean,
Who's the best, right? Zubac maybe.
Zubac maybe, but he's not been that good lately.
Yeah.
Norman Powell is just, I mean, he's hot, but it's so. I mean, it's not a trade, really
right? So
hot trade value. So
if
really
you have
nobody.
if you have these players, who do you trade them
Yes.
for? I mean, no one's
Nothing.
gonna take them. No one's gonna take them.
You just have to hope that you survive. Maybe there's a bye in your league. You hope that you survive that quarterfinals 2-game week. The week 20, the good news and bad news. There's, as I said, there are a lot of teams with 2 games. So maybe even if you're Paul George or Kawhi have 2 games, maybe the opponent has Anthony Edwards. He has 2 games. So, I mean, Phoenix, Chris Paul, Devin Booker, they have 2 games. Chicago, Zach LaVine, Rosa. There's a lot of stars with 2 games in week 20. So don't fret. Plus the fact that there's still a trade deadline on February 9.
Yeah.
So making the move right now and then your player you got suddenly gets traded to a team with a poor schedule, then it wasted your move. So just know this schedule, but don't overreact.
Yeah, this is also another reason why our trade deadline is, I think, a couple of weeks after the NBA trade deadline, so that you'll be able to, teams can have the chance to make moves still, even after the trade deadline. So, it gets more interesting as well. Once the certain players have been traded, you might want to, change some strategies because of your teams have been affected and all that. So yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's it. Playoff schedule. It's all posted in our Facebook page. You can check that out, the playoff schedule and analysis. I think we also discussed a little bit about the playoff schedule in our earlier episodes, start of the year. Because drafts, some managers looked into the playoff schedules already during the drafts. So you can check that out. We'll try to link it in the description below. All right, that's it for today's quickie. Not much happened today, just 4 games. Let's see what happens tomorrow week.
Lots of rest.
Lots of rest today. Week 16 starts tomorrow. We'll see you guys again tomorrow for another daily fantasy quickie. Bye guys.